Logan House Publishing Audio presents We Were Heroes. Invasion Day. The Long Goodbye, by J.R. Logan. Kane Joseph, the last gentleman supervillain, sat in a recliner. His bespoke three-piece suit recoiled at the grippy touch of the fake leather. He endured it for the sake of his friend, Lucian Arclight. They were in a once splendid living room that now had become a medical ward. Lucian lay in a hospital bed, dressed in a nightshirt and bathrobe. Kane would stop by twice a week to sit with him. They would talk of old times. It had been this way after Lucian's cancer diagnosis. Lucian had repeated exposures to cosmic energies. He paid the price to defend the helpless and make the world better. His skin became pale and pulled tight. His once glorious mane of long blonde hair was now thin and unkempt. When he did get up from bed, Lucian had not lost his posture and stood as tall as he ever had. But he seemed to be a frail shade of the man that once had been. A chilled decanter of vermouth waited next to the CPAP machine on the night table. The smell of fried cheese sticks filled the room. The plate and spoon rested on his knees, the only remains of Lucian's lunch. "Lucian, the doctor told you about drinking, and the fried cheese is nothing but fat. It's bad for your gallbladder," Kane said. "The doctor has to tell me that." "But you are a hypocrite to lecture me on vice," Lucian said. "Hypocrite? Vice?" Kane said. "When can I be selfish? How close to death do I have to be? You understand selfishness, you're good at it. When can I be selfish?" Lucian said. "The cancer has gone into remission before and your cosmic powers have done odd things in the past. The doctors can't predict your health. And Flan may come back from Alfheim with a cure. You have to take care of yourself," Kane said. "Flan is an elf. He has no sense of time or urgency," Lucian said. "Kane, let me be. I want a few bottles of wine and some grocery store cheese." "Stubborn as ever," Kane said. "Tell me about stubbornness. You've never walked a straight line for long. I gave you so many chances to reform. And I could have used your help," Lucian said. "I helped you twice when you needed it. When you humbled yourself to ask. Don't scold me for my life of crime. You will escape all judgment for your crime against fashion," Kane said. Lucian sat up in bed, his blue eyes filled with fire. There is nothing wrong with white velour leisure suits. He fell back into the pillows to look at the ceiling. The clock struck noon, it broke the mood, and Lucian laughed. "I'm sorry, can you go for today? I have become surly," Lucian said. Kane lifted himself from the chair and picked up his top hat at the door. He retrieved his signature cane, a rod of ebony with a gold rosebud head, from the umbrella stand. "I'll stop by again in a few days. Try and rest," Kane said. On the next visit, the housekeeper let Kane inside. The room felt brighter. Lucian sat on the edge of the bed. He looked good today, the angle of the sun for late summer, Kane had thought. Lucian sorted through a box of photos. The date on the box was 1985. It also contained old case files and a collection of newspaper clippings. Kane knew about the cold cases. There were unsolved crimes for every detective. But when Lucian was like this, Kane would sit with him for hours, reviewing notes. Lucian wanted to solve one more case. Kane wanted to get a look at his own case file. More to see what Lucian never figured out, or how much their friendship had let things go unnoticed. "Is that my booking photo?" Kane said. "I saved it. Why did you rob that bank?" "You only got $2,000, Lucian said. "I was excited to be making my first big move and banks are easy." "And it was $2,000 in 1980s money," Kane said. $2,000, Lucian said. "I never noticed the teller stuffing ones into the bag. She was as nervous as I was. It was the first time for both of us," Kane said. "You started seeing her after that. What was her name?" Lucian said. "Joanne. We had apartments in the same building, small world." "I remember you were jealous," Kane said. "No, I was busy solving crimes while you were committing them," Lucian said. "You were jealous," Kane said. "You came back soon enough when you owed the mob money," Lucian said. "That was a misunderstanding," Kane said. $1 million misunderstanding? Lucian said. We got your money back, plus a little extra, and Kelly O'Brien went to Juliet for a long time, Kane said. O'Brien was a murdering oaf. Scamming a scammer was child's play. You're horrible, Lucian said. I have been horrible. I'm surprised we both lived to retire, Kane said. I'm only semi-retired, Lucian said. The clock struck 4. Kane stood up to leave. They have yet to make headway on the cold cases. Lucian packed up the box, but he stopped Kane at the door. A rare moment of being out of bed. Next week come over on Friday. My team will be in. I'm saying goodbye. I wanted to ask you to mentor them until Philip gets his detective license, Lucian said. That pack of kids? Your fan club? Kane said. I trained them to be investigators, to think. They don't need superpowers to solve crimes. And they put you in jail twice, Lucian said. Lucian, I can't. Kane Joseph, you're the only one I can trust to look after them. You're tainted, not evil, Lucian said. Friday? The 11th? Kane said. Yes. Lucian said. There's a minor planetary conjunction that day. Flan may be back, Kane said. Where did you hear that? Lucian said. I overheard it at the bridge club. The Sybils have their own table. I listen in to the gossip, Kane said. From the bridge club? Lucian said. You have the same power as the Sybils, Kane said. No, it's not the same. I'm a detective that deals in facts. I never trusted the children of the Fates or their gossip. And I don't trust the source of my power, Lucian said. Something's going to happen. I have to get going. Friday then, Kane said. Take care, Kane, Lucian said. Flan had not returned on Friday. At noon, Kane arrived at the Arclight house with some dread. There were 5 on the Arclight team waiting in the living room around the bed like mourners. Philip Howard is the oldest at 22. He studied criminology at the University of Chicago. Kane had not seen the boy leader of the Arclight team in years. Philip had grown to become a man. Today he looked like a fidgety wreck. Mustafa Carrick, 20, an exchange student from Trinidad. Pre-med at Rush. Long dreadlocks hung off his head, and his voice spoke with an island accent. Josie Sprite, the team's videographer, 19. She was also a distance runner in those days. Kane hardly knew her as she was always in the back behind a camera. It looked odd seeing her without the camera. Tanner Walsh, the tech support, 19. Lucian had found Walsh living on the run as a street hacker. Ray-Ban glasses covered his eyes, and his blonde hair buzzed short. Kane felt Walsh had talent as a conman and could do well with some polish. He could do well as hero, villain, or both. And lastly, Mackenzie Arclight, 14. Lucian's niece. The tag-along. Mackenzie had her uncle's intellect and drive for justice. But not the friendship with Kane. In the past, because of her youth, she seldom went into the field. But she read over the case files, wrote the reports, and ran the phones. Kane only knew her by voice. Now he saw the mass of brown curly hair and a match for Lucian's blue eyes. With Kane's arrival, Lucian called everyone over. I'm retiring and passing the leadership on to Philip, Lucian said. There was stunned silence. Kane Joseph will be your mentor now, Lucian said. Mackenzie looked at Kane with hard eyes. Philip looked distraught. Kane noticed the young man had always worn his emotions on his sleeve. But unlike Mackenzie, Philip and Kane had worked out the bad blood. Philip, let's go out to the garden, Kane said. The 2 men walked outside and around to the Arclight Rose Garden. You're old enough to lead this team. I'll lend a hand and be along for the ride. Once I introduce you to a few underworld contacts. Kane said. Tanner ran up to them. Yo, Phil, Tanner said. Tanner, you're a member of the Arclight team. Manners are expected of you, Kane said. He hoped this was what Lucian wanted. Dudes. Aliens are attacking the East Coast, Tanner said. That's the East Coast. This is Chicago, Kane said. The League issued a flash warning. Frickin' landing ships are inbound, Tanner said. A flight of scarab-shaped landers the size of airliners passed over to cast a deep shadow on the house. They headed for downtown. Oh dear. Tanner, please get Mustafa, Kane said. Mustafa and Tanner met Kane and Philip in the driveway by Kane's '69 Rambler. The trunk was open. As Mustafa approached, Kane handed the three men Tommy guns. I trust you know how to use these, Kane said. No sir, Philip said. We get on the job training, Mustafa said. He snapped a drum magazine into the gun. Dude, why do we have Tommy guns? Tanner said. Style, and they work. If we can't solve a problem with 50 rounds of .45 automatic. You need new problems. Let's get inside, Kane said. Lucian was up. The bathrobe pulled tight around his waist. He had a brightness, an energy Kane had not seen in years. Lucian Arclight had a purpose. Mackenzie paced around the room, folding blankets and adjusting the pillows. She cleaned when nervous. Lucian, one last run of it? Kane said. No, he can't. Uncle, please go back to bed, Mackenzie said. Before Lucian could say anything from the bay window, a neighbor ran past, chased by an ant creature the size of a pony. Miss Arclight, I don't think that's an option right now, Mustafa said. You see Tanner, Mustafa gets it, Kane said. Style? Tanner said. Yes, in all things, Kane said. Enough, Mackenzie said. She saw the guns. Kane Joseph, what are you going to do? I'm going to give a tutorial on the manual of arms of the Thompson 1929 submachine gun. Then we kill aliens, Kane said. As Kane gave his talk, Lucian had watched the news. The city was in flames. He had no case files that matched what he saw. It was all new. It invigorated his mind, and the pain from the cancer faded for a time. Where are the heroes? Mackenzie said. Sheltering in place, fighting, rescuing, whatever needs doing. The scale of this is beyond us, Lucian said. They walked outside to the garden. The back fence opened to a hilltop to show the city of Chicago. Flashes of energy specked around the buildings. They watched a storm cloud form with unnatural speed. It released a torrent of lightning and thunder. The clouds faded as fast as they came. They could hear pops and cracks from punches that broke the sound barrier. The rattle of far-off gunfire echoed in the streets. That storm was magic. A lot of magic, Lucian said. The city's gone mad, Mackenzie said. No, the city has become mad and these aliens will reap the whirlwind. Everyone in Great Lakes will set aside their petty rivalries, Lucian said. How can you know that? Great Lakes has been a pit of dysfunction from the beginning, Mackenzie said. The League of Science primed this pump long ago. It's the one chance for many who have lived a life of crime to find redemption. A chance to show up the heroes. With this, Kane Joseph can have his record expunged. He can join the team, Lucian said. We can't have him, Mackenzie said. He's not as vile as you think, Lucian said. He brought his hand to his eyes, rubbing them. What? Mackenzie said. There are forces at work. This is great powers politics at a galactic scale. These aliens are a vassal of someone higher. A tool. Help me get dressed, Lucian said. You're going to do something, Mackenzie said, arms crossed. Only if I must, Lucian said. We're off, Kane said with a tip of his hat to the housekeeper and Josie. The four men walked out the door. Mr. Joseph, you don't have a gun? Josie said. Kane smiled. He held up the walking stick and released the lock. The cane sipped off to reveal a long thin blade. Outside, the ant creatures were in groups of 3. Green pods had slammed into the yards of the neighborhood. One pod blasted a 6-foot crater in Mrs. Smith's flower garden. It cracked open and let an alien crawl out like it was born. They looked like ants with longer hooked forearms. They had triple multifaceted eyes on each side of the head. Long hooked mandibles jutted from the jaw. A second alien twitched with death throes in a half-cracked pod. A third had crawled out a few feet and died. That pod had hit a decorative boulder in the garden, ending the possibility of a soft landing. The first started its climb out of the small crater. Aim low, walk the rounds up and let the guns do the work, Kane said. The 3 guns rattled a spray of bullets into the ant. It staggered back to roll into the crater. Kane felt a wave of relief. They had usable weapons. Philip looked shaken by the recoil. Kane waved Mustafa and Tanner back. "Finish it," Kane said to Philip. Philip looked down at the wounded creature. Mustafa raised his gun, but Kane waved him off again. "Fight through the hesitation," Kane said. Philip shouldered the gun. "Josie and Mackenzie are not safe," Kane said. Philip pulled the trigger, spraying bullets. He lowered the gun, and sweat broke out over him. Mustafa slapped his shoulder. "Good job, Philip," Mustafa said. A buzzing hum behind them brought Philip back to where he was. Kane stood over a fourth alien. Its head rolled past them. Kane wiped the gore from the blade. "We are going to round up the neighbors and get everyone into the Arclight garden," Kane said. The four men walked from house to house. Kane killed in silence. The Tommy guns were used when needed. They walked the neighbors in the case of Mrs. Smith, carried her to the garden. Soon they had more men, some to stay behind and some to go out. Kane sent Mustafa and Philip out, to lead groups of men. When Kane brought a group back from his third trip out, Lucian had dressed. The old velour leisure suit was loose but dazzling white. He walked around the garden as a good host. Lucian made small talk with the neighbors as Josie filled pitchers with ice water. Kane walked over to Mackenzie. She watched the television. As she flipped the channels, the emergency broadcast screen came up. Plumes of smoke climbed into the sky from downtown. Lucian gave Kane a nudge and pointed to Tanner. The young man talked with Josie. She hung on his every word as he described the rescues. "Oh, there might be a happy ending for someone," Kane said. The housekeeper brought out a tray of Lucian's pills. He looked into the cups. "No morphine and no more vermouth," Lucian said. "Morphine and vermouth? No wonder you have cancer," Kane said. "The opiates haven't worked in months." "I want a clear head," Lucian said. Mustafa ran up to them. "Mr. Joseph, you should see this," Mustafa said. The end of the block opened a stretch of road that ran downhill for a mile. At the far end, a swarm came led by a giant ant. The size of a city bus. "Philip, get everyone back to Lucian's," Kane said. "You can't fight that," Philip said. "We're not fighting it. Mustafa and I will lead them away," Kane said. "As long as we can," Mustafa said. The Rambler raced down the street. Kane behind the wheel. Mustafa hung out in the passenger window with a Tommy gun in hand. They passed by the front row. Mustafa sprayed down the giant alien. Full-jacketed .45 automatic seemed to do nothing. With an empty drum, Kane turned the wheel and hit the gas. They speed down the side street. The swarm didn't turn after them. The giant never took its 6 eyes off Lucian's house on top of the hill. "Take us around the block," Mustafa said as he changed drums. It was the last one. "If this goes bad, grab Tanner, Josie and Mackenzie and drive out of here," Kane said. "Mac won't go," Mustafa said. "Make her go," Kane said. They came around the block. Mustafa emptied the gun into the line of ants. They marched forward over their dead. Kane did a J-turn to head back to the house. The ties smoked. Lucian stood at the top of the hill. His white sports jacket fluttered in the breeze. Kane slammed the brakes, bringing the car to a stop. He gave the car to Mustafa. Kane turned to Lucian as the Rambler drove off. A lander hovered over the swarm, blocking out the sun. "I think they are here for you." "So our last stand?" Kane said. "No. You've never seen my full power," Lucian said. Lucian pointed down the hill. Cosmic powers flowed from his fingertips. Black lightning arched out down the road, gaining speed. It jumped from ant to ant, popping them into a yellow mist. A wave of black lightning flowed into the back rows and then up to the lander. It shuddered with a pop and fell to the ground, wrecking houses and aliens. Far in the distance, the lightning skipped from alien to alien, crossing the river into the city. The wave of dark lightning rolled across town, out of sight. "Dear God, Lucian," Kane said. The Rambler returned, and Mackenzie jumped out, dumbfounded at the destruction. As the lightning faded, Kane looked at Lucian. He glowed with golden light. It seeped from his skin and hair. For a moment, Kane saw Lucian Arclight at his full power and the man he had once been. "This is the end, Kane Joseph," Lucian said and smiled. "Goodbye, my friend," Kane said, reaching out to hold Lucian's hand. Lucian evaporated into small balls of golden light. The leisure suit remained behind. Kane removed his hat. Mackenzie fell to her knees. She cried, holding the sports jacket. Kane reached into his breast pocket to give her his handkerchief. A golden ball of energy swirled around the girl. Then more came to spin around her. Kane took a step to grab Mackenzie and get her away, then stopped. It was the cosmic powers at work. There would be no running. One ball touched her, then they all raced to her. She lifted off the ground, arms out as cosmic energy flowed into her. She became radiant. Mackenzie Arclight's hair turned golden blonde. Epilogue. 2 months later. Kane looked at the lettering on the office door. The painters had done an excellent job. The door said, Arclight Detective Agency. Mackenzie opened the door. She wore a white business suit and her hair was the color of spun gold. "You're on time," Mackenzie said. "Always," Kane said. The last of the gentleman supervillains walked in and took off his hat. The end. Text-to-speech audio provided by Narrakeet at narrakeet.com. Audio editing software provided by Audacity at audacityteam.org. Invasion Day stories can be read at loganhousepub.substack.com. Logan House Publishing audio is available on YouTube and loganhousepub.substack.com podcast. Please like, comment and subscribe. Thank you for listening. Copyright 2023. Logan House Publishing. All rights reserved.